Director Brennan, thank you very much for coming to the Sunday Show. As a former head of the CIA, tell me how concerned you are about Russia's moves on nuclear plants in Ukraine.
Well, Jonathan, I think it just reflects the recklessness with which the Russians are prosecuting this war in Ukraine. To engage in this firefight at the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, and with the potential for the reactors, and I think there are 6 reactors at that plant, to have been breached as a result of firing, artillery, whatever. I think, as that person who was speaking said, the endangerment was far beyond that region if there was going to be some type of nuclear escape of nuclear material in the area. We saw what happened in Chernobyl many years ago. And this plant, power plant, was much larger than Chernobyl. So the fact that the Russians are going after these power plants, nuclear sites, and there's fighting around them, I think it raises the specter that one of these reactors might in fact be compromised, and therefore there could be a very devastating nuclear event that affects not just the surrounding area, but that has broader and global implications.
We've been talking about what Russian President Vladimir Putin said yesterday about sanctions and the no-fly zone. I want to play again for you what he said and talk to you about it on the other side.
And there are some irresponsible statements that they should create a no-fly zone over the territory of Ukraine. It's impossible to do, but any move in that direction will be considered by us as a participation of that country in the military action. That very second we will consider them as members, as participants of this conflict. And it doesn't matter what members of what alliances they are. So I understand, I'm hoping that this will not come to it.
So, Director Brennan, how concerned should the United States and NATO be by those words from Vladimir Putin?
Well, I think Putin is continuing to try to describe Russia as a victim in this whole unseemly affair. And trying to implement a no-fly zone would be very, very difficult. And I do think it would lead to a quick confrontation between Russian and NATO forces that could have a very immediate escalatory spiral of uncertain potential. Because you're not just going to try to deny Russian aircraft's ability to fly over Ukraine, you would have to take out air defense sites, the Russian air defense sites in Ukraine, mobile sites, as well as those sites inside of Russia that extend several hundred miles inside of Russia's borders. And so then there would be strikes against these Russian facilities and air defense systems that will lead to, I think, a very rapid escalatory spiral. So I think, as the Biden administration is trying to do, they're trying to provide the Ukrainians with the wherewithal, including on air defense as well as air capability. That's why moving these MiG-29s from Poland into Ukraine so that they can quickly incorporate it into Ukraine's command, control, and communication system, and Ukrainian pilots know how to fly them, and the MiG-29s are capable aircraft, I think that will provide the boost that the Ukrainians need right now to defend themselves.
Admiral, Director Brennan, the Russians are attacking nuclear plants. They're taking them over. My question is, why have we not seen more of an aerial assault on Ukraine? Russia is supposed to have a quote unquote superior military. Why haven't they taken over the skies over Ukraine?
Well, I think we have seen footage of Russian aircraft and helicopters being downed by Ukrainian defense forces. And so also I think it reflects the inability of the Russian military to be able to control the environment, the airspace. And the Ukrainians are putting up stiff resistance. And I think it just shows that the Russian military has not had the experience operating in hostile environments. When they operated in Crimea or in Syria, they didn't really face any type of resistance from ground forces. Here, the Ukrainians, I think, were prepared for this. They were bolstered as a result of the weapons flow that went into Ukraine even prior to the invasion. And so I think the vaunted Russian pilots are not really as competent as I think Putin thought they were. which is why I think the entire invasion has bogged down. And unfortunately, now the Russians are resorting to their traditional tactics of intimidating the civilian population. And these strikes against civilian targets, particularly once ceasefires are called, this is something that is just so typical of Russia.
And one more question for you, Director Brennan. I believe it was after a phone call between French President Macron and Putin that the French president said that in the phone call with Putin, he said the worst is yet to come. You've been in national security a long time. Focusing on Russia, what could that possibly look like?
Well, I think it means that Putin is likely to double down, because I really do not see that he has the psychological makeup to reverse course here and to pull his forces out of Russia. And so I think we're going to see an intensity of the military pressure inside of Ukraine. Whether or not he's going to try to provoke something with NATO along the border of the 4 states that are adjacent to Ukraine, I'm not sure. But Russia has a way out, but I'm not sure if Putin sees a way out of this without some type of escalation to put it on an even higher trajectory as far as Russia's pressure and military onslaught in Ukraine that, again, can spill over into a Russia-NATO conflict.
And one more real quick question. How likely do you think that that is, that if Putin succeeds in taking over Ukraine, that he won't stop there and will try to go into the Baltics or even into Poland?
Well, I think his appetite is unbounded in terms of power and influence. And I don't think he's ever going to be able to take over Ukraine, subjugate the people. It's just not something that I think his forces are capable of doing. And so therefore, I do think that this is something that we need to ensure that we're able to stop. Because whether he goes to Moldova or the Baltics or somewhere else, I do think that he is drunk on power. He is unstable at this point. And he sees that the corners are closing in on him. And therefore, what he might do to lash out, to try to survive this situation is unclear. But this is where I think we have to put up a very stiff, strong, and immediate defense of Ukraine and continue that international isolation that Putin so rightly deserves.